the Vols lose Julian Phillips to the transfer portal. Something I definitely want to dive into because we talk about rosters changing in football, but really moving forward, it could be far more dramatic in basketball because one or two players can obviously make a bigger deal in basketball. Guys will mature later on. So we talk about transferring and all that sort of thing in football, but really you have to be a pretty special player, like a quarterback. If you want to take Southern Cal, for instance, and what they were able to do with Caleb Williams bringing him over. I mean, you can have a massive impact, but pretty much just a quarterback. In basketball, good afternoon, morning, Caleb, evening, whenever anyone is watching. You can have one dude that can change the course of a program and turn them from an average team to a very good team or championship team. What do you think of Julian Phillips transferring? Good morning.
I think Julian Phillips is transferring largely because I'm going to give some credit to Rick Barnes on this. And I can't believe I'm saying this. We talked about this last week with some of the roster turnover. I'm convinced now Rick Barnes is changing his philosophy. This is a huge sign. Rick Barnes loves the mid-range still, and he loves to have the length advantage on the inside. Well, Olivier Nkamhoua and Julian Phillips have both entered the portal now. These were two starters at small forward and power forward for Tennessee that were really lengthy and used size massively to their advantage. And they're both gone. And what has he gone to get in return? He's gone for sharpshooters. Don't Connect, and I think that's how you pronounce his name. I'm not entirely sure, but I would assume it's Connect. But then also the Jordan Gainey, the son of assistant Justin Gainey. These were both sharpshooters at where they were. That's their thing. They're spot-up shooters. And obviously Santiago Vescovi is back. Sure, he added Chris Ledlum from Harvard for some defensive prowess, and I was concerned about that move. But when you look at the different changes that have gone, it's pretty clear he's focusing on elite shooters more than ever before. All signs other point to Freddie DeLeon being a great shooter, too, a four-star guard who committed in the middle of the season.
Okay, so changing philosophies, what do you think the philosophy changes into? Because the philosophy last year was dump it into a post and he kicks it out. But the problem was the post wasn't a real offensive threat, so nobody collapsed down and they just defended the perimeter at the three-point line. So I still think you have to have, unless you're talking about a vast philosophical change, if you're still dumping in the post first, you still got to have a guy who's going to be able to scare people in the post to get defenses to collapse down. So there's a little bit of disconnect with me and what you're saying here. Are you talking about they're going to be some sort of oriented team first?
Historically, in his old school methods, usually you had two guys in the post that you had to worry about typically, and that's how Barnes usually went with. Think about the Celtics teams of the 80s. You needed to worry about Parrish and McHale. Yes, McHale had the fundamentals, but Parrish was a force down low that you had to worry about. And that's how many teams were constructed for years and years and years, and that's how Barnes liked to construct his teams. He's going with one guy now. I think he's going to make sure there's only one guy and then four shooters surrounding him. And he has that guy. Jonas Adu can be that guy. Uras Plavsic can't be that guy. You and I both agree. I think that Tennessee fans will be happy if he made the dumb decision to go into the NBA draft. But Jonas Adu can be that guy. And they have Kate Phillips coming in, so they have a couple of options to back up Jonas Adu. They got Toby Awaka, too, still. So they have options in the post. But I think Barnes is going to be focusing now on making sure he has enough spot-up shooters and enough options to go to. Because last year, if Santi Vescovi wasn't hitting, the offense was just a disaster. A complete and utter disaster.
So you have complete confidence in that Jonas Adu can scare defenses enough from the post and his ability most often, I'm referring to most oftentimes back to the basket, to create points that people have to collapse down. You have that much faith in Adu?
Yes, because in college, unlike the NBA, you don't necessarily need footwork and fundamentals in the post. If you're athletic and can pass, which Jonas Adu has those two things, it can really, you can be an impact player. There were a lot of guys historically that are like that. Jonas Adu is very athletic. and he can kick it out. Now, yeah, that wouldn't be enough in the NBA because there's guys that are as athletic and taller than Jonas Aidoo, so his footwork is questionable. But those two things in college is enough. It's more than enough. And so I think Tennessee will be fine.
Okay, so I assume we're talking about Zakai Ziegler running the point if healthy. And then we would
watch out for Freddie DeLeon. I keep saying it, but watch out for him. He is a potential superstar.
Okay, so one of those two guys running the point.
Yes.
Right? Then at the 2, Vescovi.
Yep.
And then where we fit in the other shooters, and are you talking about basically the 4 positionless players and a post? Is that not positionless because the point, but you see what I'm saying? 4
3
perimeter
positionless players in the a point guard, a center, and 3 positionless players. And who starts in those is a little bit doesn't really matter. Like Santi Vescovi will obviously be one of the starters among those 3 spots. If Josiah Jordan-James returns, he'll be one of the 3 starters in those spots too. And yeah, I think one of the transfers and again, one of the transfers or Freddie DeLeon, one of those guys I think is going to take the other spot. I think DeLeon's going to see the court. I don't know if he's going to see it as the starting point guard or as the combo guard next to Zakai Ziegler, and then he takes over point guard duties when Zakai goes to the bench, which that happens a lot of times in basketball.
Okay, we've got to see this happen first. But this is like Joe Rogan talking about aliens. We've got to see this happen first, but
that's amazing, man.
But based off what you've described, I like this team already more going into the season. We're months away, but I like this team more than I did going into last year. If Barnes holds by that, the concern to me is that it's going to work kind of okay and he gets used to it. It's kind of like a tuxedo. A tuxedo you go get and it's uncomfortable to put on and it's a little stiff, but you're like, man, I'll look pretty good in this thing. But you don't put on a tuxedo the next day. You wear whatever the heck you're going to wear, even if it's a sport coat or a suit. So that's my concern, is that he'll never be fully comfortable in this type of offense, and he won't be Tennessee tuxedo.
I mean, I could see that, but the personnel he's developing, it almost seems like he's going to be forced to be comfortable in this type of offense. Oh, I forgot about Jemai Meshack. He may start too, and he's more of a defensive specialist. But if Meshack develops an outside shot, watch out. I mean, we're talking a very dangerous team. But I get your point, but it has a lot to do with the way he's constructing the roster, where he is ended up. It's almost he's going to be forced to do this. So 2 years ago, when Olivier Nkamhoua went down with the season-ending injury, Tennessee got significantly better after that. They went on a run. They won the SEC tournament. They got a 3 seed in the NCAA tournament. That's because Barnes was forced to play small ball and move Josiah Jordan-James to the 4. That was a huge deal. So if James comes back, you'll have Vescovi at the 2 and James at the 4, I think. And then he'll find he'll use one of the sharpshooters, either DeLeon or somebody like that at the 3. But yeah, I do think he's changing his philosophy this late in his career, which maybe he watches this show. I don't know.
You don't even remember. You're too young to even remember the cartoon Tennessee tuxedo, aren't you?
I'm way too young to remember that. No idea.
Yeah.
What that is.
I got called that in South Beach, and I just told the guy, I said, man, if you want to, because I told him I was from Tennessee. Yeah, I was like, if you want to go, we can go. And
you were going to fight over that?
Yeah, he just kept calling me that, and it got on my nerves. I mean,
for the record, guys, this is where the cultures of Memphis and Knoxville are a little bit different. In Memphis, like, you're expected to be made fun of for how you look among all your friends, no matter what, and among everybody you meet.
Oh. Well, he kept calling me Tennessee tuxedo, and then he said, how does Tennessee and we're just sitting at a bar, we don't know this guy, and he goes, how does Tennessee tuxedo have a good looking wife? And I'm like, all righty, that's the line. Do you want to step outside? And he said no. And I said, well, then you need to get away from me. He said, I was sitting here first. I was like, I don't care, you need to go.
Oh my gosh. Look at Dave over here starting fights.
Oh, I was the king of starting fights on the strip. The thing was, I was with the Powell High School football team who averaged 300 pounds on the offensive line. So I'd start it and they'd finish it. And sometimes I'd get dotted and I'd be out sleeping in the middle of Cumberland Avenue. And I look out and they're finishing it. I was like, good job, guys. They're like, why do you smart off every time we go to the strip?
So wait. You were like, I don't know if you watched wrestling in the 90s, but you were like Eric Bischoff in NWO when Eric Bischoff would just do the shadiest stuff, and then he'd like have the whole NWO gang behind him with Hulk Hogan and all those guys come just jump everybody. But he would start it all the time.
Right. Well, I mean, I didn't run. I wasn't scared, but I would get I'd get dotted on the temple and then I was out. So that's kind of how that shook out.
Everybody, Dave was Eric Bischoff. That's what we're deciding now.
I don't know who that is, but if he was an instigator, then yes, I was that guy.